The COVID-19 pandemic unearthed and exacerbated existing disparities in health outcomes, economic stability, and racial equity in our communities. Coined as the Great Accelerator by many, the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified existing trends and deepened cracks within our systems. So, where do we begin? With a background in health strategy in the middle of a pandemic, I turned towards a place I was familiar, public health. And here's what I saw. To date, our systems have been designed by the few. And by the few, I mean white, wealthy men in formal positions of power. And those systems have been serving those few. These systems are centralized, require great resources to access, and don't reach the margins of society. Within this context, I started to understand that the inequality we are seeing today is not by accident. In fact, it reflects the values and identities of the designers. It is working exactly as it has intended to, and it's drying up our communities. Let me tell you a story. It was the second week of March, and my 80-year-old neighbor reached out to me. She said, "I'm scared to go to the grocery store. Will you shop for me?" Of course. She said in exchange, "I will write you a note of poetry each week." And thus we began in mutual aid. I went to bed that night and thought, why aren't our grandmothers being cared for? What does this say about our systems, services, and products and how they were designed? How are the other grandmothers faring? I woke up the next morning and reached out to some community organizers. "Can I help you at your next event?" I asked. They were delivering food to a couple hundred elderly housing units in the Chinatown International District in Seattle. We arrived on a crisp blue morning. We made assembly lines and dashed across the neighborhood. And thus we began again in mutual aid. The more I spent time in mutual aid spaces, the more I thought, how might we design in a way that centers community power and participation? Can decentralized community center models like mutual aid be translated into other spaces or even sectors? I took this question to my studies. I researched how community power and participation can influence the design of systems. Through 3 separate projects, I researched methods and processes for increasing community power and participation in the design of health products, systems, and services. I learned that regardless of the context, we have been relying on experts to design, and we've been defining expertise wrong the whole time. You know, we are experts of our own lived realities. Therefore, the experts we should call upon to influence the design of our products, systems, and services should be those directly impacted. In short, people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. That story I told you of the organizers starting grocery delivery for elderly in the Chinatown International District, that movement grew. It grew into a county-wide network, into an operation managing tens of thousands of dollars per week, into a movement that meets hundreds of families' basic needs, not just once, but over time. And it's still going, and it's still growing. You see, this model of decentralized design, where people closest to the problem are provided the agency to design their own solution, reminds us that we don't need to create something new. We need to unearth what many, from mycelial networks to indigenous land stewards, already know. We work best in networks. Decentralized design pushes back on the narrative of a single expert and amplifies the power of a collective. We are best in relationships of reciprocity, both giving and receiving. Decentralized design regenerates spaces and people formerly discarded or unattended to. And lastly, it teaches us that we are not special, but we are needed. Decentralized design isn't just reserved for one type of work. It is a practice for government, business, policy, and community alike. The results that our sectors and societies produce are only as good as the breadth of people we engage in the design. As a society, we are at a critical inflection point for change. As our reality changes, we need to be open to our design changing too. The opportunity is to reimagine how we design. The invitation today is to build micro models of decentralized design in your own lives with your elders or neighbors or community or business. This will lead us to a future where everyone designs. Thank you. My name is Chelsea Schiller, and my work focuses on designing community power, participation, and health. I'll be working on this more with Haifa Collective, so feel free to visit us at this site. Thank you.